Welcome to Registered, the podcast of the Catholic Register, where we'll be taking a look beyond the headlines of the stories that graced all of our platforms this past week. I'm Mickey Conlon, editor of the Register, alongside associate editor Quinton Amundson and reporter Luke Mandato. This week's episode is brought to you by Our Lady Seat of Wisdom College. At Our Lady Seat of Wisdom, Catholic higher education goes beyond the classroom. Through bachelor degree programs, students are formed intellectually, spiritually, and personally. Visit seatofwisdom.ca to learn more. Well, guys, it was a real busy week at the Register. So many stories this week stood out, but when it came to the cover story, we had to go right to our tie-breaking formula, and as kind of happens most of the time in the Catholic Church, at least here, the Pope came out on top. There you go. Actually, it was a pretty easy decision as Quinton gave us his take on the upcoming first anniversary of the Cardinal formerly known as Robert Prevost being elected Pope Leo XIV. That was May 8th, 2025. Quinton, you had some time with our very own Cardinal Frank Leo to find out his opinion on the Pope. I'd say it's pretty fair to say the pontiff has a fan.
A big fan, no doubt about it. And one of the qualities that Leo really likes about the other Leo is his ability to listen and be attentive to people's concerns. So maybe to use a sports analogy, it's sort of game recognizing game. Well, Cardinal Leo would never say himself that he's a great listener or he's, a great person who's attentive and present at all times. To a person, every individual that we interviewed at the time of Cardinal Leo's ascension to Cardinal say that those are the best qualities of the Toronto Archbishop. So it's quite interesting how the Cardinal is also latching on to those great traits from the Pope. But of course, there's also the intellectual acumen, his ethical certainty. We're seeing that on a whole range of geopolitical issues, and that he is very inclined at listening to the perspectives of others and coming to wise, sage decisions. So the praise is just overflowing that the Cardinal has for the Pope, the 267th successor to the chair of St. Peter.
Well, the interesting part I found in your piece is that Cardinal Leo, while he's got these opinions of the Pope and his style, he is like very much like the rest of us, still getting to know this Pope, and we're all forming our own opinions. So I don't know what you guys think, but I will say my favorite part of him is just very, very recent, and as when he wouldn't take the bait of the that big orange fella down in the U.S., Donald Trump, who, of course, you know, thanked himself for getting Pope Leo elected, and you know, just he was very graceful and said, okay, I won't take this guy's bait, which is pretty easy to do. You can take his bait because he's just that polarizing sort of guy. But the Pope, he wouldn't. He wasn't going to get into any kind of argument with Donald Trump over the Iran battle. The Pope just came out and said, "Hey, I want peace." That was pretty simple. So maybe some of our leaders, like Prime Minister Carney, Premier Doug Ford here in Ontario, and Premier Kinnew in Manitoba, well, maybe they could take a page from the Pope and not get involved with this. Don't need to respond.
Yeah, those are all good points, Mickey. And I think for me, well, first of all, I think anytime the Pope's a baseball fan, that's a plus for me. Anytime I'm flipping channels and a White Sox game comes on, I'm reminded of him. So, I mean, that's always nice. But other than that, I just think he's been a fantastic sort of continuation of Pope Francis. But like you said, kind of in his own style. But you can see how much following his legacy, what that means to him, and that's something we've heard a lot of people talk about, and that's really refreshing. I think we all had things about Pope Francis and his leadership that we really enjoyed, and to see it continued in kind of a refreshing way with a little bit more of an added sense of just brotherhood and compassion for the common man has been really nice to see. He seems very down to earth and everything that I've seen him do, and that's something refreshing as well. Quinton, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I of course had an opportunity to go see an Angelus address that he did, and I really think that it's valuable that he speaks 5 different languages. That'll just be good for growing the presence of the Catholic Church. It's also very valuable that he is pretty physically spry at 70 years old. He'll be able to move and perhaps carry, do some physical, laborious tasks that his 2 predecessors, frankly, just weren't able to do as well. There's just a whole pathway of options for him to get his face out there and get the message to all the corners of the world where Christ's message needs to flourish. And yes, he is speaking out about, important issues with a lot of certainty. I would like to see him speak a little bit more about the plight of Nigerian Christians who are being persecuted. And I would like to also see him maybe express his own voice a little bit more rather than maybe be steered by others on files like China. And then I think he could really be more dynamic in year 2. So time will tell. We are still discovering a lot about this guy, and I am very interested to see what 2026 and beyond will do under his stewardship of the church.
Yeah, there's chances are that, at this point in Pope Francis's papacy, we were probably saying very much a lot of the same things. That we're just getting to know you there, fella. But as you mentioned, he's a pretty spry 70-year-old, so there could be a chance that we've got a pope that's going to be in office there for many, many years to come. And we wish him the best as always. So, but varying opinions on the Pope, sure there are. I'm pretty sure, though, we're all united on this next item, and that's the story Luke did this week about the next foray into artificial intelligence. People who have been tuning into us, we know that we discuss artificial intelligence quite a bit. This one was a doozy, though. So, Luke, I guess, it was only a matter of time, but we have an AI Jesus who, for only $1.99 a minute US, will help us on our faith journey. Luke, tell us about this. We're just waiting. We got to hear this.
Yeah, I think a doozy is the correct way to address it, Mickey. And as you said, we're usually pretty open and pretty accepting of AI advances and different AI topics here at the Catholic Register, and especially when we discuss it here on Registered. This one, we're not so sure, or maybe we are so sure, but just not in an accepting way. So essentially, the story, to boil it down for our listeners here, is a company known as Just Like Me, based out of Los Angeles, essentially uses AI chatbots. For a certain price per chatbot, you could log on to this site and be greeted with either a celebrity or a figure like, say, Santa Claus or someone as an example. You log on, it's an AI chatbot representation of that figure. You can speak with them, ask them questions, things of that sort. I think we've all seen how it operates. What caught my eye, and I'm sure what would catch many of our listeners' eyes, was, as you said, Mickey, staring at me on that website was what appeared to be, the stereotypical image of what we believe Jesus to look like. And sure enough, as you said, for $1.99 USD per minute, or I believe it was something like $50 every 60 minutes every month, you can subscribe and speak to an AI representation of Jesus at any time, essentially.
What a bargain, eh? What a
bargain. And this has kind of sent the AI and faith world, or those two worlds when they intersect, into a bit of a frenzy. So not only did I sit down and speak with the CEO of Just Like Me, Chris Breed, and the co-founder, Jeffrey Tinsley, to chat about, what is the idea behind this? Where did we come up with this idea? I was also able to sit down with a couple other people in the faith realm that have kept a close eye on AI in recent years, whether that's Father Michael Baggett, an associate professor of bioethics in Rome, Father Philip Larry, philosophy professor from Boston College, and even Bishop Thomas Dowd out in the Diocese of Sault Ste. Marie. All of them have been pretty united in the fact that, well, and I said this before, well, the chatbot does maybe what it's advertising to do, which is, maybe provide a scripture-based answer to a question. It absolutely cannot facilitate an encounter with Christ. And it's something that we have to be very cautious of when we see things like these pop up, and will likely continually pop up in the future. So, Mickey, when you read this story, when I pitched this to you, when you clicked on the link and saw what I was talking about, I'm sure you thought I was crazy in our story meeting for bringing this up. Where did your mind go?
Well, we have to do this. We have to cover these sort of stories. But well, I think you all know that when we had our meeting about this, and well, the jokes really started coming out. And I'm not going to go into what some of those jokes were. Could have been a little risque, we'll say, but you know, no one really takes it seriously. I don't think we did, anyone here did, but there are people out there who are taking it seriously, which is pretty unfortunate.
Absolutely. And the main sort of discussion point was the fact of, I asked the creators, what is this designed to do? And they said, well, you can pray with it. You can have a sort of ongoing working relationship with it in one way or another. And every other professor or priest that I spoke with said, prayer is free already. We can go into our room and pray to the real Christ for free. We can go and see him in the sacraments, but blood, body, soul, and divinity. So I think the underlying point is the fact that things like these sort of solve a problem that doesn't really exist. Yes, they do what they're advertised to do. Yes, it looks like Jesus on the screen there, but I think we all know that this is really nothing more than a large language model that's trying to facilitate or help people that may be in a bad place. And when I spoke with Father Michael Baggett, he said something very similar, and we will run that clip here.
We are blessed with such easy access to prayer. The Lord says we can go to our room in quiet and pray to the Father in secret. And we can do that anywhere. Many are blessed to have access to a church with the Blessed Sacrament, where God dwells, body, blood, soul, and divinity. The constant quest for relationship with the divine that we see in so many faith apps is also a reminder of our role as baptized and confirmed Christians to always be ready to give a reason for the hope that is within us. We do not need doctorates in theology to do that. Doctorates in theology can be very helpful, but any baptized, confirmed Christian should be equipped and ready to know, live, and then transmit, share the beauty of the gospel, and then take the time to show that other person who may be suffering, may be confused, how that gospel can be a light to their life.
Of course, that was Father Michael Baggett giving his take on this chatbot, what it means for us as Catholics moving forward. Quinton, I hope you had a chance to read this story, or at least hear about it a little bit from myself or Anna Farrow, who did a great editorial on it as well, which is on catholicregister.org. What did you think of this, Quinton, when it first came up?
Well, I really appreciated how both you and Anna Luke got to the point that we are really going down a road of folly here. You shared that scripture verse about how, once again, we're playing God and we're doing things that are deeply problematic. I mean, I thought that this would be coming, that we'd have AI Jesus maybe like a year or two from now, but the fact that we already have it so early on, and it's just like, where are we going to go from here? If this is where we're at the starting gate and we already have something very calamitous. And I think that there really needs to be a call from a lot of voices to be like, no, this is unacceptable. I mean, Philip Larry said in your piece very well, it has to be taken down. I'll say it. It has to be taken down. There can't be an AI Jesus and get mobilized, Catholics. Like, this is absolutely unacceptable. And I think that you and Anna really capture that very well. And I appreciate that there are some very good, motives, being expressed here by the CEO of this company, but I think you need to go back to the drawing board and do a little bit more discernment because I think you really need to abandon this course of action. It's absolutely wrong. One of the worst things that you could do with AI is prescribe human qualities to this while at the same time, treating humans more like machines. That is what all these various experts are saying is the great danger that we find ourselves in. And we're already going down this road, and we have to turn course right now before it's too late.
As I always say, and you guys have heard it, The Terminator was a documentary. It wasn't a film for your enjoyment. It was just that. So, yes, I think, we are all in agreement. AI Jesus really is crossing the line. Anna put it really nicely when she said, why do we need to pay for this? That's why we pray. So, uh, we could go on and on and on about this very, very easily, but I think we better cut that short. And but if we are going to talk about the bad in AI, well, why not some of the good? And Quinton, you wrote this week about Catholic health networks that are embracing AI to improve health outcomes. And I guess they're in the infancy right now, but they're showing promise.
Yeah, they're embracing it, but they're using this thing called ethical discernment in their decision makings. Maybe some other groups ought to try it. Might be a
Yeah.
good course of action. They are consulting with popes. I mean, the papal writings, and Pope Leo has come out with a lot of stuff. The bishops, particularly in Alberta, have done a lot of conferences, and that's guiding Covenant Health's approach. And they're baby steps. They're using it for the scribes to take down medical records to make administration a little bit better, for maybe the cataloging of records. But I mean, of course, they're going to maybe do more ambitious forays in terms of diagnostic screening down the road. But right now, it's a little bit of slow as steady wins the race. And I mean, Unity Health, Providence Healthcare, Covenant Health, it's just one little step at a time. And I appreciate that the one man that I talked to, from Providence Healthcare, was saying that he was at a conference that Archbishop Smith was at, and one of the big messages there that human dignity cannot be discarded as we go down this pathway, and that seemed to resonate strongly. And it's not about removing people from their jobs; it's maybe transitioning people into different jobs. So if the AI takes on some of the more trivial, or really just sort of meticulous administrative stuff, well, then maybe the humans kind of do more pastoral care, more one-on-one time with patients. So there's ways to do it in a way that upholds dignity and the dignity of work in particular. All good. That could be a good thing.
Well, yeah, I guess a lot of people, because if they don't go beyond the headlines, they just see, about AI getting into, the healthcare. They, might think that again, there's a Terminator that's doing my surgery, and it's like, no, it's not quite at that point yet. So, and like I've seen it. We've probably all seen it. Well, maybe not young bucks like you guys, who of course are the epitome of good health, but old guys like me who are we're using the health system a little more. So I see some of these changes coming into effect already. Like I can go to what we used to call a physical. Well, the physical now is you go and you sit in front of the doctor and he's in front of his computer screen and it's like, all right, what's wrong with you? And you tell him and Oh yeah, so he's getting all kinds of suggestions, from AI is saying, okay, maybe this and that. And then I guess the doctor, he or she will use their own judgment and make some kind of diagnosis of you. And so I'm hoping I always did like the physicals, because it just you felt like someone was actually doing something and making a uh, an attempt to find out what was wrong with you. But you know what? You can't. You got to look at any way that's going to help people feel better, and let's give it a shot. And so far, hopefully, so good. What do you guys think?
I think it's a great thing. I think this is a great article to show people that may be fully anti AI at just how well it can benefit things when it's not being offensive or going or crossing a line or replacing someone entirely. When we use tools like this to enhance, not replace, it can be fantastic. And, if this is the early stages and we're already seeing how it can benefit people, imagine in a couple years' time with a little bit of refinement what something like this can do, and some of the things it might be able to diagnose or sort out, and benefit these doctors and nurses that need help right now. When we look at the healthcare system, especially here in Ontario, I don't think we should ever be turning down anything that can help that field right now. It's hard to get people, it's hard to get professionals, especially administrative, as you mentioned there, Quinton. That's a field in of itself that's lacking immensely right now, just with the numbers that we're facing. And that's, I believe, throughout the country, not just here in Ontario. So to have something to assist that, relatively inexpensive, relatively easy to manage, I think that's an excellent thing.
I guess the one thing I would add, if there are ways to just end the horror stories that we hear of just people waiting so many years to get in to have a surgery, if there's just ways to just boost the productivity so that problem becomes a figment of the past, well, that could be one of the great, victories of AI and robotics. I mean, because that's another thing that, robotics will be another thing we'll have to look at down the road. But yeah, intriguing, but I mean, I think, maybe kind of the whole thing that ties these, stories together is that, people with Catholic values that could make a big implant, in the AI world, whether it be with designing the technology, inputting the prompts, like get into the arena right now. Just don't stay on the sidelines. Try and make a role in shaping this future.
Well, we've been saying in pretty well all of our conversations about AI. It's remember who's telling AI how it is. It's us. So that's where Catholic ethics they can come into play. So, okay, I think that's going to bring us to an end of this episode of Registered. I'd like to thank you guys for joining me. To you people who are tuning in, and of course, this week's sponsor, Our Lady Seat of Wisdom College, where Catholic higher education goes beyond the classroom. Visit seatofwisdom.ca to learn more. And to keep on top of all the Catholic news at home and around the world, including our special coverage this week for Catholic Education Week, which begins May 3rd here in Ontario, make sure you visit our website at catholicregister.org. Again, thanks very much for tuning in, and we hope to see you next week.